This is the Bitcoin revolution. Hey guys, my name is Daniel and you're watching the Bitcoin series. Today, Bitcoin is a household name with over 420 million people holding various cryptocurrencies. In 2009, Bitcoin was introduced by Satoshi Nakamoto, who introduced a peer-to-peer lending platform that was used to send money without intermediaries. For me to detail why this is such an important technology and a step forward in the way that we send money, we need to go back 5,000 years as to why money actually exists and what the purpose of money actually is. 5,000 years ago, for you and I to trade, we would use a system called barter. Barter was a system in which we would trade services and tools and products for other services and products. But the challenge of this was that it was greatly fundamentally flawed, because this would only work in a closed circle network of people that we trust. An example of this is that if you had a cow and I had a sheep and we wanted to trade, but the value of your cow was worth more than mine, it would be very hard for us to calculate and split up these animals. And if we needed to trade cows and sheep, we would often go with unrecognized amounts of value that was not accounted for. And so we would recognize that you were trading more than me, and it would go as a trust-based process that one day I would repay this promise. But as the economy grew, more and more trading happened in the space, and we needed to move from a barter system to a way of trusting each other without actually trusting each other. In early 700 BC, valuable metals such as gold and silver, which was used to barter trade and provide value to these services and goods, became so heavy and so burdensome to carry that banks started to trade them for promissory notes, which you could trade back at the bank at any time. This was the first circulation of paper money. And this became the model that foreign governments started to use as they did foreign trade across border. So if we think about it, cash are basically just simply debt. If you hold cash from the US government, the government is promising you that this cash has value and that it can be traded back at the government at any time for the face value of the note. This was all fine and dandy, and when the US came to the superpower that it is today, it promised that your face value of note could be traded for gold. But in 1970, Richard Nixon changed this, and in an unprecedented decree, depegged the value of the US dollar from gold standard.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
So it is the role of the US government to ensure that the value of the currency that they provide to you, the debt that they provide you in the form of cash, has value. But when a government cannot own up to this promise, it enters hyperinflation and the cash becomes worthless. This is exactly what happened in 2009 with the Zimbabwe dollar. Eventually, the Zimbabwe government had to move to the US dollar because that was a stronger backing. Cash today is a form of trust, and we rely on the US government and many of these other governments to ensure that that is the case. Prior to the digital age, banks would act as borrowers and lenders and also custodians of your money. You could put your cash with a bank, and they could promise you that at any time you can take your cash back. They would secure and ensure that your cash remains safe so that you no longer have to keep it under your pillow or in your home. The way that banks make money is through three different business models. The first is they charge you a fee for protecting your money. This is the custodian fee. The second is that every time you make a transfer, they will help you make the transfer between other banks, and they will take a fee from that too. That is a transaction fee. And the third way that they will make money is that the money you deposit with them, they would borrow from you, and they would lend it out to somebody else who would value it higher than it is today. This is the way that banks function, and this is the way that money works. It is a constant cycle of cash and credit, and lending out money to people who needs it and giving interest to those who don't need it today. And so what happened after the dot-com boom was the US government needed to regenerate the economy. So they allowed people with bad credit to borrow from these banks and to purchase houses. This is the mortgage subprime broker scheme, which caused a lot of issues and eventually caused the downturn in 2007, the Great Recession. What happened was that there was a lot of people borrowing money from these banks that we were putting our money in. And the banks were lending it out to creditors who eventually started to default. They started to default because they had bad credit history. They could not pay back their loans, which means that there was a domino effect in which the banks could no longer retrieve these loans and pay back the customers that they borrowed from. And so what happened? The banks went bankrupt. They could no longer serve the company, and they no longer had the funds and the liquidity to give to you as a depositor from these banks. Lehman Brothers went bankrupt, but many of these other banks got bailed out by the US government. And the US government started printing money out of thin air to provide to these banks so that it could return your money to you. The US government made policy that you can lend out at a cheap and easy cost, and if you went bankrupt, they would revive you. This was the precedent that they set, and they showed two major flaws in the US economy. One, governments could print as much money as they wanted as long as it suited them. And two, banks can control your money and you don't actually have ownership. And this is the widely known reason why Bitcoin was created. Bitcoin is the evolution of money, because with cash, the real issue is that you need intermediaries to marry up and to prove that your money has value. In Bitcoin, it uses a peer-to-peer decentralized network where many people agree that it has value rather than one central entity. Bitcoin has a limited amount. It only has 21 million, and only 21 million Bitcoin can be minted. And this is the reason why many of the US government don't actually like Bitcoin, because they are losing control of the way that money works. As more people start to use Bitcoin and trade Bitcoin in a way that it becomes a source of value, people will use the US dollar less, meaning that the US government can no longer weaponize their currency, and Bitcoin will be used as a source and a trade of value. Bitcoin is the revolution.
I'm right here watching history be made. Bitcoin is now up to $111.
Thank you guys for watching. In the next video, I'm going to tell you more about how Bitcoin works and the revolutionary technology in which a peer-to-peer system solves the double spending problem and the money printing problem. See you guys next time.